In the humid Mississippi twilight, it's around 1915 outside of Clarksville, Mississippi. Along sun-drenched dirt roads, a ragged wooden shack pulses with music. Inside, lanterns swing, casting dizzying shadows over bodies sweating and swaying. Guitars growl, feet stomp, dancers shout, and the moonshine flows freely. Rules seem to be forgotten. These are unabashed temples of the blues where cowboys and cotton pickers gather every Saturday night just to feel alive after a week of back-breaking toil. This music was their freedom. It was honest and daring, yet filled with sorrow. But as these same notes trail off into the air, floating across fields and dark woods till they reach another small shack, there, a mother kneels over her children, clutching a Bible. She whispers a Bible verse, dreading the sinful sound drifting from those cursed clubs. After all, it's Saturday night, and tomorrow is the day of salvation. Church bells ring in judgment, warning that no good ever came from the devil's music. Blues and religion are neighbors trapped in conflict, waging a cultural war that defined a generation of music. So join us today while we tell the tale of the devil's music. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. If you like audio only episodes, you can find my podcast wherever you find your podcast. But without further ado, how did blues gain the reputation of the devil's music? Let's take a step back to the beginning. At the tangled crossroads between freedom and the lingering shadows of enslavement. Despite popular belief, the blues didn't emerge from enslavement, but rather rose dramatically from its complicated aftermath, the heavy contradictions of emancipation. When the chains fell, liberation arrived weighted down by poverty, exclusion, and relentless hardship. And out of this paradoxical freedom, authentic and powerful music emerged. In those Delta fields along southern plantations, Black men and women drew upon generations of musical traditions, work songs, spirituals, field hollers that whispered tales of oppression endured and resilience gained. Embedded in their melodies were cultural memories from Africa's western coast, rhymes and refrains guarded like sacred heirlooms across generation. Released from their bondage, these ancestral voices began to evolve, gradually shifting away from stories of survival towards something more personal, expressions of love, loss, sadness, longing, defiance, betrayal, humor, joy. This was the blues, born raw, honest, and pulsing with life. But this moment of truth collided dramatically with a formidable force: the Black church. Consider Charlie Patton. He was a pioneering bluesman who mastered music through traditional hymns and spirituals sung faithfully at his local church. When Patton began to embrace the blues, swapping out Sunday mornings for smoky Saturday nights, he faced alarm and outright hostility from church elders and family alike. Patton's choices weren't simply controversial, they were outright transgressions. Church leaders openly branded blues performances and the guitar as the devil's business, and young musicians like Patton found themselves caught between the uncomfortable pull between the sacred expectations and the secular truths. Yet even this could not suppress someone like Patton, who discovered liberation and power in the bending of strings between haunting riffs and gravelly verses. These tensions reverberated powerfully throughout the Black community across the South. Patton's struggles were not unique. Countless blues artists navigated similar roads, bridging Saturday night indulgences with Sunday morning sanctuaries across kitchen, church steps, and dusty crossroads. The blues rapidly gained notoriety as the devil's music. Musicians who dared to tread these paths were no longer seen merely as entertainers. They were rebels, disturbers of traditions, and challengers of religious authority. And this is where it gets deeper, because in steps the story of Robert Johnson. It was said that Robert could not play the guitar worth a lick. Then one day he disappeared, Church folks whispered, wondering where Robert had gone off to, and then he returned shortly thereafter with skillful fingers agile as they come. The townsfolk whispered in horror, a soul cost a heavy price. Johnson, they claimed, sold his eternal salvation at the crossroads to the devil himself for the price of musical genius. And this local rumor became enduring Southern mythology. It was a deal that became the gospel itself to church folks. And Johnson himself even sang about it, stating that I went down to the crossroads, fell down to my knees, asked the Lord for mercy, save poor Bob, if you please. Thus, this took hold, and the blues was forever etched in Americans' consciousness as the devil's music. But around the same time, there was a great current of social struggle that was reshaping entire Black communities. Just before World War I, there was an extraordinary shift called the Great Migration, which launched millions of African Americans away from southern towns and countryside, scarred by relentless prejudice, poverty, and brutality. Families packed their threadbare belongings in suitcases and trunks, bundles tied with cord, aboard trains towards uncertain new cities like Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, and New York, and with them their voices, their stories, and above all, the blues. The blues flourished with the same relentless energy that drove these families northward to challenge and confront the haunting contradictions of freedom burdened by poverty and violence and discrimination. And now, on those rail lines, spreading upwards from Delta Crossroads, the sound began to etch into urban landscapes far from its rural origins. In 1920, a defining moment arrived when Mamie Smith, a blues vocalist with a fearlessly captivating voice, slipped into a small recording studio in New York and sang a song called Crazy Blues. When Mamie Smith could scarcely predict how dramatically this simple act would transform American music. Almost overnight, Crazy Blues blew away all expectations, selling 75,000 copies within a few weeks of its release. It was an unprecedented number. The blues was no longer confined to juke joints and informal gatherings underneath the southern sky. Suddenly, it traveled out across city streets, filled apartments with crackling record players everywhere, and America had found something that it simply could not ignore: a fresh, provocative voice deeply rooted in the Black experience. And yet, as the music spread, so did controversy, alarm, and fierce opposition. Religious leaders, echoing their elders from southern communities, quickly brandished the blues as morally corrupt, dangerous, and even sinful. Preachers delivered fervent sermons, railing against these sultry rhymes, warning the congregations that the devil hid in every note, every emotional lyric, and every rebellious performance. Parents worried too, forbidding their young, eager listeners from gathering at halls and clubs where the music now thrived. Yet, as church communities battled against Charlie Patton's Saturday Night Blues back in Mississippi, Northern Voices' condemnation also struggled against the inevitable. Controversy only made the music more exciting, more alluring. Each angry parent simply fueled the fire. Blues would continue to surge in popularity, and it was around this pivotal moment that musician and composer C.W. Handy, known as the father of the blues, pushed the genre even further from its origins. Handy understood that this musical legacy could challenge and uplift in equal measure, and carefully transcribed and arranged traditional blues songs and new compositions for orchestras, bands, and formal dance halls nationwide. Blues was shedding its rustic boundaries and claiming its place along the nation's cultural stage, transforming itself into America's own musical idiom, intricate and powerful. Yet, as blues grew, it never traveled far away from its rural roots. It remained fiercely tied to its beginnings, and those very early tensions were never resolved. Take Muddy Waters, for instance, a young bluesman who moved north to Chicago, and his grandmother told him when he first picked up the harmonica, son, you're sinning, you're playing for the devil, and he gonna get you. However, Waters' passion for the music of the South was even more resolute. That raw pain, the lingering redemption feel from his stirring performances answered his moral objection, insisting that blues wasn't demonic, it was simply honest. This refusal to be silenced lit fires across America. By the 1940s and the 1950s, and new generations of voices emerged, amplified and electrified. Musicians like B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf swapped acoustic guitars for electricals, pouring their truths louder and clearer into crowded clubs, smoky juke joints, and urban neighborhoods far from the Mississippi Delta. The blues spread its irresistible wave, migrating from southern towns to bustling cities like New York and Chicago and beyond. Yet, even these musicians found voices powerful enough to shake walls and rattle church pews. The resistance would linger. Church elders, rooted communities, and moral authorities still labeled it as dangerous, rebellious, even the devil's music, associating black music with sin, excess, and cultural revolt. Musicians face scrutiny and judgment from their own hometown congregations, living with this tension between Saturday night and Sunday morning. And still, artists like Sister Rosetta Tharpe defiantly blurred boundaries, electrifying gospel and challenging the preconceived notions of sacred and secular music. And as time went by, generations shifted, and children who secretly listened at night would openly love and celebrate black music, race records, the blues. Its influence began to permeate outward, weaving itself into jazz melodies, gospel harmonies, and eventually fueling the birth of rock and roll itself. Elvis Presley, who was raised in a black community on Southern gospel, yet electrified by the blues, secretly stepping into Memphis clubs, would carry the legacy of the blues. Aretha Franklin, the daughter of a preacher, borrowed blues, defiance soulfulness to craft honest R&B. And across oceans, bands like the Rolling Stones and later pop icons like Beyonce drew deeply from the blues' legacy, embracing the rebellious honesty and the emotional intensity. Today, the stages may glitter brighter, the venues may grow larger, but underneath this polish remains the blues' raw truth. Each guitar note, each soulful song carries with it this historical weight of defiance, resilience, sorrow, and profound joy. Stepping back, we recognize that there is indeed a devil at the crossroads, but not a literal one, but a figurative one, a vivid representation of society's fears surrounding emotional release, cultural rebellion, and self-expression through music. Indeed, the true crossroads bargain that blues musicians made was simply to exchange society's comfortable silence and its easy judgment for honest, truthful stories sung boldly and unapologetically. Thank you. This has been One Mic Black History. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this is the story of the devil's music. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. If you like audio-only episodes, you can find my podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'd like to thank all my financial contributors. I love you all. Without you, none of this could be possible. And peace.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.